All right, I am so excited to be back here in the TFA Memphis office in the Alumni Impact Room with this amazing guest for another episode of Alumni on Air. This is where we have alums like this special guest come in and tell us about their story and their journey of going from doing the core to what they're doing in alumnihood. And this person is just chef's kiss. You're gonna just out soak it up, get comfy because it's so much good inspiration that's about to come your way. And so really lean in on this one, you all. But who am I? I am Dr. Jamilica Hayes. I am the managing director of alumni and programs here at Teach for America Memphis. And I could not do this work without my counterpart who helps me with all things, who's behind the camera, who's got us this nice setup. Shout out James Larkin, who's our director of exactly. I mean, it's really nice. Director of operation, director of of alumni communications and engagement. And so I just got to jump in. So let's go ahead and get into it. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And y'all, I owe her lunch, I owe her coffee. It's been a lot of logistical things, but again, she just has such a beautiful spirit and just such an amazing leader and just so gracious. So I appreciate you dealing with all of the up and down logistics and being just flexible and understanding. But who are you? I know I told them a little bit how great you are, but just who are you? Tell us your name and what does your name even mean? If you have that.
Well, hello everybody. I am Jamilica Burke, born and raised Memphian. And for myself, I am the daughter of a social worker. I am the granddaughter of a sharecropper. I have lived and grown in Memphis through my adolescence, had an opportunity to go off to school, have other experiences. But for me, the core of my work has always been community, family. Memphis to me there's always this adage that says Memphis has so much potential. And I always on the side of, how do we actualize that and turn it into action to where we are actually fulfilling that? Because that's part of the vision that I see from Memphis is what role do I play in making that happen?
Yes.
And so just having an opportunity to just reach in terms of background has always been in education. It's interesting, I started off as on route to be a doctor.
What?
Yeah, I started off being a doctor. So graduate of East High School here in Memphis.
Okay.
Yes, Mighty Mustang.
Okay, now I'm gonna give her a little love and a little push.
Yes.
I was a warrior, Central warrior here.
Okay.
But I did love the Mustangs. I loved East. I did love when I would visit the school. It was amazing.
Yes, and so for me, being part of the optional program, I was in health sciences, did a lot of work in education. I always wanted to care for people, and my family was like, because I come from a family of social workers, caregivers, police officers, civil service, they were always like, no, you cannot go into those fields. You must do something else.
Okay, all
So
right.
they took it off the table early for me. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And so through those experiences of really seeing Memphis from the standpoint of also health equity, what does it mean to be a change agent from the standpoint of making sure that we don't just have the education we need, but we feel at our best.
Yes.
We have the health that we need to fully actualize that. So when I went up to school, I did my pre-med requirements. I've always been also a lover of politics, poli-sci major.
Wow.
And so through those experiences, I say, you know what, this is great. I was attending University of Chicago, having an opportunity for the first time to really connect with different people outside of Memphis in a different way, because coming from Memphis, majority, almost all black high school, and now attending a PWI, it was a different experience for me, and it taught me some skills that I needed to learn in order. How do I grow and how do I still show up as my best self, but also be able to navigate these different areas and different rooms that I'm now in. And so through that opportunity, did well in the sciences, finished my MCAT, but I was like, you know what, this quarter system at University of Chicago, I think I want to take a break and not go directly into medical school. And so I remember my senior year, actually, Wendy Kopp came and spoke on campus.
What?
And so that's how I first heard about Teach for America. I was like, what is this thing called Teach for America?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I'm an old head, so I was in the Corps before there was a Memphis.
Before there was a Memphis Corps.
Yes, I was an Atlanta 02 Corps member.
Yes.
But listening to her speak, it was very inspiring just to hear the impact of what she was trying to accomplish and trying to scale the work at that time. And so I said, you know what, that's something I think I could do. It's like, hey, a 2-year commitment. I get an opportunity to really give back, work with youth, which I enjoy doing, and it gives me an opportunity to just make sure that I've done some other things before I go right into the medical field. So I started teaching, as I said, in Atlanta, 02. I was a 4th and 5th grade teacher, and I love that age. I love that age. I've always been a very competitive person, but I'm also very sarcastic, and so they were at the right age to where they understood my sarcasm, but also at the same time, they still wanted to make sure they were doing what they need to do.
Exactly.
But come from someone who's always been an achiever, played in all sports, very competitive, national championships and competitions. My first year teaching was the first time that I actually failed.
Oh, wow.
I came into a classroom in Atlanta. I was at Scott Elementary, and had a classroom of a lot of young people that were just looking to me to really support them in so many ways. Like, I've heard the stories in terms of, hey, as a teacher, you're the preacher, you're the caregiver, you're the provider, you're the nurse. Like, it's a different thing when I had to experience it, while at the same time I'm trying to learn this skill that I knew very little about. And so my first year, I did not feel as though I was at my best, but I felt as though I was failing my students. I had great support from the Atlanta team with Teach for America that really helped me to think through, well, this is how you actually build that skill to actually facilitate, to have conversations, to train, to understand curriculum, to understand the foundations of literacy, because even though I had 5th grade, many of them came to me unable to read on grade level. And so how do I balance that, but then also the inequity and just the division that I saw in terms of resources that were provided? I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I provide all these things? So there were just so many questions that I just felt so overwhelmed. Now, I've gone all the way to national competitions for debate teams and in sports, but this is the first time that something hit me so hard in a way. And so through that experience, but going back to I'm competitive, I'm not going to give up. And I'm definitely not going to give up on the students in the classroom. And so continuously working with the Atlanta team, doing more reading, starting getting certifications. They said, oh, you can also get a master's. Started going to Georgia State to get my master's during that period. And so I look up, it's 5 years later.
That's what happened.
And that's what they got me. They got you.
They do get you. They get you.
So
now.
Watch out for that. So I received my master's from Georgia State in educational leadership with a focus in early literacy. And so I was like, okay, I'm hitting my stride. But I came to a point where I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue on this path of education and being in this field? Or am I going back to medical school? Because the 5-year mark is either I'd go or I would have to check all my science courses and everything else again.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, I prayed about it, talked to my pastor, talked to my family, talked to just some confidants and mentors of mine, and made the decision to stay in education.
Wow.
One thing that I did say about is that even though I'm in the classroom and now I am excelling and doing well with my students and having results to show it, I still didn't feel as though I was having the impact that I wanted to see long term.
Interesting.
Because in my class of 25, 30 students, I could see progress, but no one told me and advised me don't buy a house in the same neighborhood in which you teach.
Oh, wow. That's actually tea, y'all. That's come on, so give it to us.
I literally was 3 minutes from my school. Yes, I was a teacher that was late every day because I lived 3 minutes from the school. I didn't say that. But throughout the years, what would end up happening, students that I would teach in 4th and 5th grade, obviously I would always come back and visit, get the knock on the door, we would always have conversations. And so I was trying to square and understand, how was it that you left me an honor student, but now you're in middle school or you're in high school, and you have backtracked. You are not excelling. There are significant deficiencies. There are several supports you don't have. You're just trying to figure out how to make it, because many times they're like asking me for help and support. And at that time I just felt so ill-equipped and not really knowing all that was possible. And so I wanted to look for opportunities. Well, what are things that I can do outside of the classroom? And so I ended up being a coach, to where I was coaching other teachers, and then also worked Institute for Teach for America Institute for 3 years, 3 summers in a row in Atlanta, being able to also work with incoming core members as they were coming into the core.
What year's Atlanta Institute?
Ooh, we're gonna make this up. It was either 07, 8, 9 or 8, 9, 10.
Wow.
In that window.
That is so. I did the core in 2011. We had to go to Atlanta Institute, so I
you just missed me.
Wow, that's so. Okay, keep going. I just moved that one. I was like, this is like clandestine, like it's all okay.
Yeah. So through those experiences, it broadened my appreciation of education and all the different contours that need to be in place in order to do that. But I was trying to figure out, like, how do you really scale and connect? Because then I started to get more into systems work and understanding the importance of external partnership and having mentors and had understanding even how from a policy perspective, because keep in mind I was also a policy major, and so understanding also how policy impacts our young people. And so I was trying to figure out, like, how do you bring all these pieces together?
Exactly.
And so I knew that I wasn't making the impact that I wanted to see in this classroom or in the school. So I went into the district, also did some virtual learning to just understand the avenues of what the different ways those impact you. And so from there, I ended up doing some fellowship programs of just my own leadership development, of understanding, look, I've been developing these skills. I've also gotten my project management certification. So there's these things that I can do to really help strengthen not just operationally how you can connect the dots, but what does it look like to really do that in a meaningful way.
Exactly.
So I went on to also, I've always been a believer that education is important even beyond high school. And so even though you may not get your secondary degree, what are your credentials or skills? Because you got to have a plan. Like my grandma said, my grandmother had a 7th grade education, but she said, you must still have a plan in whatever you decide to do. And so that has always stuck with me throughout my life. And that's something I try to expound upon and have that conversation with the students and that I taught and that I mentored. So through those opportunities, I said, well, maybe the path for me is to be a superintendent. Like, run, not a large district, but starting small, like, to where I can really now pull on all, be in a position where I can now pull on all the levers.
Exactly.
And really build a system that can really be productive for students and kids and their families. And so I ended up doing a broad residency program. And I was making up these dates again. I think it was 2016.
It's all coming together.
It'll come together. So 2016, I did the broad residency program, and I was actually placed in Memphis. And so that was my footstep back into Memphis.
Wow.
And I was matched with the Achievement School District.
Okay, yeah.
And there, having an opportunity to work with at the central office level, I was tasked with a lot of our community engagement, technical supports, structured operations in terms of how do you bring people together.
Yeah.
Almost like the left hand, not the right hand of the executive director at the time, of just how do you bring all these pieces together. And so it was really meaningful work. But what I just still saw coming back to Memphis, I've been back to Memphis to be with family, but never really as an adult. Because when I left Memphis, I was 17 years old when I went out to college. Right. And so this is my first time being an adult and really experiencing the full breadth and depth of Memphis, where we are, where we've made progress, where we haven't. And I was shocked by it didn't seem that much had changed in the almost 16, 17 years that I had not been in Memphis. And so I was curious about that and trying to understand that. And this was also during a period of time when Achievement School District was doing a lot of transitioning as well. And so I was, first time ever, I got the cut. And I was like, wait a minute now, I'm cut? That has never happened to me before. And having that experience, it was something I was trying to figure out, like, well, what is my next step? Because this was my plan. Like, I was doing well in Atlanta. I didn't have to leave. I came for an opportunity to work with my community, to build a different skill set, to paint another vision. I was like, well, maybe, is this my path?
Exactly.
Or is it something else? And so here I am at 30-something trying to have a life crisis.
Ooh.
In terms of what's next for me.
Now, don't hit me on the pew now. I'm on the pew now, y'all. I'm feeling it. Okay, I'm in that moment. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and so it forced me to do a lot of self-reflection in terms of what does it mean to really do meaningful work in my community? How do I connect the dots to make systems work better? How am I ensuring that the things that families and children need from the time they enter this world until they are adults and making their own decisions, like, how do you position yourself to do that?
Right.
And so I had been listening to several podcasts at the time and obviously having conversations with several mentors and those that I trust here in Memphis about what should my next steps be. Like, do I stay in Memphis? Do I go back to Atlanta? Do I go somewhere else?
Right.
Things of that nature. And the decision was stay here. At the time, my family is all here as well. And so it gave me an opportunity to reconnect with them, Some families were having some health challenges, so I also just wanted to be closer from that standpoint. So at that time, I was also doing a lot of reading around collective impact and the power of systems and systems change and systems transformation, and learned about an organization here called Seeking Success. Had some conversations with their founder and CEO, Mark Sturgis, just about the work and what does it mean to be impactful and connect the dots, and really look strategically on how to connect government, community, schools, people, programs, resources. It sounds like, I mean, it is a lot. It's a lot, but it all has to work together if you are to really build the Memphis that we would all want to see to be successful. And so went to that organization as Director of Collaborative Action, really charged with a lot of our partnership work, but at that time we were also making a shift in terms of how do you go from supporting individual organizations to now taking those learnings and scaling. So now how do you make best practices from that? How do you now connect that to other avenues outside of the nonprofit realm to where you're now able to scale in a way, but also bring not just a conversation, but tools, resources, training in a very operationalized way. And so a lot of that work when I first came on board was about that. Soon went into a role of Chief Strategy and Impact Officer, now leading all of our strategic initiatives and strategic planning. And a large part of that was really working with, like I said, with government, with school systems, with nonprofits around. There are some critical challenges that we're facing as a community here in Memphis.
Yes.
And it takes all of us being at the table to
It does.
accomplish and change that. And it also takes having those very difficult, hard conversations, putting ego aside, understanding someone else's point of view, being able to lean into data and evidence and research and best practice from other places to understand, like, how are they tackling these issues? Because I know it's not just Memphis. So how do you really, what I like to say, build a container and be the connective tissue to really bring all those pieces together? So for the last 7 years, I've had an opportunity in Memphis to do a lot of that meaningful work, which has led to some wins. Working with even at the local and state level. One of our biggest wins was really working with our early childhood partners to really understand and say, look, everyone said we need to have pre-K for all of our 4-year-olds so that when they're entering school, they're ready to learn.
Exactly.
All the research says, look, if they have a great pre-K opportunity in education, they're 89% more likely to graduate high school. So bringing together early childhood partners, post-secondary institutions, government, we were able to really develop a plan and strategy, which ultimately came to what we call today First State Memphis, and has led to having city and county government really support making sure all 4-year-olds that need pre-K have access to pre-K. And so it was really exciting to be a part of that, to see, okay, this is what is meant when they say systems change and sustainability and being able to put things in place. Like, it's not glamorous and sexy, but it's the work.
It's the work.
So opportunities like that, really working with our state to unlock how to make sure all high schools have high school computer science, because before 2021, that was not mandated. High school did not have to do that. But legislation was passed in order to help make sure to pave the way for that. Being able to work closely with schools around improving their outcomes. So how do you build a network of school improvement? We were able to do that with some reports that we have from National Philanthropy to actually embed individuals in schools to help schools look at their data and evidence to understand what's working, what's not working, how can we improve practice, which ultimately became some of the foundations of other things that are now, like, how do you improve schools? And so when you think about all these different pieces at play, I get excited about it. Now, don't get me wrong, it has been very hard, it's been very challenging. There's starts and stops, but what I say is that's the work.
That's the work.
Because I say if it's a messy and linear, clean line, you're doing something wrong. And if it wasn't going to be challenging, and if it was easy, it would have been done already.
That is true.
And so that keeps me motivated in knowing that, you know what, we are making a difference. No, we're not the direct line, the first line in terms of providing direct services and working directly with families, but we want to make sure that the mechanisms and engine that's needed to make all those things work are happening. And so I know I sit in a seat of privilege to where I get to take a step back from the day-to-day in terms of how do you support this young child that does not have a home tonight or does not have food. but it does give me a larger lens to where I'm looking at things across multiple sectors and areas. So most recently, we've taken a lot of these learnings to really move forward the initiative that we're working with right now called More for Memphis.
Okay.
And that is a collect. And so for More for Memphis is what we were tasked with doing is, look, if we're trying to improve mobility, and mobility to me being defined as how do you ensure that this young person have the inputs and opportunities and resources they need in order to be successful so that they're better off than their parents.
Yeah.
The trend has been going backwards here in Memphis. And when you look at the mobility rates, we use a lot of Raj Chetty's data. If you're not familiar with him, he's an economist out of Harvard, and he has some of the groundbreaking research to where he was able to take over the last 30 years. How do you look at IRS data, census data, and really track what's the trajectory of our young people? And for this particular study, he did it with young men to understand over that 30-year period, what's the likelihood of them going from the bottom quartile to the top?
Yep.
And for our black population here in Memphis, it was less than 2%. When you look at some of the other communities across the country, you're talking about 14, 16%. So our big goal with More for Memphis, well, how do we get that to 20? How do we get that to 17, 20% here in Memphis?
Yes.
This will not happen overnight. No. We're talking about generational. So you're talking about at minimum the next 20 years to move the needle and make change to where that can happen. And so through this process, we've been able to bring together a diversity of stakeholders that I've named, government, nonprofit, school systems, community members, residents, youth, faith-based organizations, to really have this tough conversation about what, as a community, what do we need to prioritize and focus on?
Yeah.
And so from those discussions and bringing data and evidence and research to the table, those define the 35 strategies now that make up More for Memphis. And so More for Memphis is a comprehensive strategic plan to improve mobility here in Memphis.
Love it.
Is it perfect? No. Was it a perfect process? No. But it was an intentional process to where we worked really hard to engage as many people as possible in that process. And not just in one system, because when you think about improving mobility, it's not just about improving education or just about improving health or just about improving community development. You got to figure out what are the levers in each of these areas in terms of now how do you join them together to where you're looking at a stacking of resources deep in place to where now Jamilica has access to a good school that connects her to a nursing program when she's ill, that has opportunities for her parents who don't have a college degree to take on training so they can get additional certifications. So when you think in that lens in terms of now how are you bringing all these pieces together, it's nothing, I would say, and I'm the first to admit, there's nothing novel or new in the ideas. The practices, the work has always been done.
Yeah.
What we have not done a great job of is, as we learned and a lot of people shared this process, is sometimes our siloed behavior, our lack of coordination, thinking about how we can maximize resources by doing more things together. So this gives us an opportunity, a framework to do that. And so through this work, we're in the process now of standing up governance, because we also said no one organization should be able to make all decisions around this work. So it will be a governance table that would have representation of all those different stakeholders that are helping to shape on an annual basis what is our annual agenda, or what are the priorities that we're working on from year to year from the resources that we have. And so as we're moving into this next iteration of the work, we'll be working very deeply in the South Memphis community, even though, yes, this is a countywide approach that has countywide impact. But when you think about, well, how do you get targeted to know what does this look like to do it in one specific defined location? Just imagine the outcomes you can do if you can do that well with the partners and the residents that have already been working very closely together. And many of our communities, they just need an opportunity to have the resources, the time, the energy and effort and coordination to make it happen. And we're hoping that we can do that work with a lot of this that we're moving forward. So really excited about what's to come for us and for Memphis in the direction of this, because it has so much potential in terms of thinking about how we're really going to be moving the needle in a positive way for our community members, and not just for the next year or two, but long term. Because again, this is generational. Like, I want to be saying that this is work going on well after I'm here, you're here, and everyone else. But we've really taken time to think about how do you really change the way that we work together in a way to where we are being very efficient and effective in how we are working with our community. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
I think there's been so much momentum around it.
Yeah.
And then there's so many great opportunities and so many organizations and entities that are doing such great work.
Right.
Like, how do we now help to scale a lot of that? Because yes, of course, yes, there's funding that's needed.
Yes.
But even on top of that, just having an understanding and knowing like, oh, I never knew this organization existed.
And that is so true.
This could really help us to do this. Oh, I should be having more conversations with them.
That's
like,
Memphis.
Even from the adaptive side of it, it has so much potential to bring change and have us to retool, because I think a lot of times people feel as though I got to do it all.
Yep. And then we get burnt out, and then we are not able to do the impact, and we're not able to reach. What I love about your story, Jamilica, is when you were talking, no matter what you said, I kept seeing that 4th and 5th grade classroom. Everything that, when I think about, I taught 3rd grade at Institute. And I thought about it, and I was like, I'm an English teacher. I want the little babies and all that. And middle school became my thing.
They had me in kindergarten class, and one day for a substitute teacher, I begged. I said that one day was all I needed.
That's all. I just think that's not. But somebody is their ministry, and I appreciate you. But when I think about the experience of that 4th grade. 5th grade teacher in you, is that you had to teach the ability of understanding content, but also how to be humans and work together. And a lot of their work when they're that age is, how do I see this person as my friend? How do I bring an asset? Because when they start to get to that age where they're getting close to middle school, that's when they might start to see differences and like start to have their cliques and start smelling themselves, as I like to say. But as a teacher in that classroom, you're the one kind of helping everybody see, we're all a part of this community. You did that there, and then as you saw, okay, I'm watching you live in the community, so I'm still watching that community grow. How do I keep everybody here in this piece? And then you continue to layer that. All those teaching skills, all of that ability to see a problem, to use data, to make sure you don't give up, to be analytical, to also have compassion. All of that came, I think, from that teaching experience, from that learning experience. And then it built up, and now you're doing the same exact thing, teaching and reaching and leading in your role now. And that is amazing. And I know Memphis is very proud to have you home. And I think what I also love, and I want people to not miss, is that sometimes we think a setback is something to hold us back, but it's really a setback is a setup. And it sets you up and propels you to be able to, again, pull what your grandmama had told you, that plan you had of healing people through medicine, you're healing them through the community. And that is amazing. That is something that is just chef's kiss, and I'm just really appreciative of that. So when you think about the healing that you did as a teacher, the healing you want to do as a doctor, the healing you're doing now, was that your vision for one day? When you think about Teach for America, we say one day all children have access to excellent education. Did you think that? Was it in your mind? Or
it's interesting. Like, when I was saying it as a core member, I just felt as though I was just saying saying the spiel or saying the speech. Like, I didn't fully connect with it until I had more experiences and really was being more thoughtful and reflective about my life, the impact that I'm having on children, and the work that I do. And so now, my vision is a large part of what I talk about. When it comes to Memphis, I am 10 toes down, 10 fingers in from Memphis. And so what do I need to do in order to make sure Memphis is seen as that shining star, and not just on the state stage, but on the world stage? So we also now bring in the impact of globalization, AI. We're not just a connected community; we are a connected world. And so, how are we ensuring that Memphis is prepared and to be a lead in so many of those areas? Because we got all the pieces there. We do. We really have all the pieces there in so many ways. And it's just more about like how we're bringing it all together, and how are we leaning in the things that we know that we do really well, and trust others to do the things that they do really well.
That is key, and and I love that other portion you're bringing about with this ego. when you're teaching, and one thing that's gonna humble you is that little baby in that classroom.
They will humble you real fast.
They will humble you, and you get to a point where you realize, I thought I knew, I thought of everything, and I love your vulnerability and acknowledgement of the failure that you felt in that classroom, even though you were making academic gains, even though
because I did not feel it.
And I think that's something important for us to remember as you coming into the Corps, as you are in the Corps, as you're an alum. It might not always feel good that you're making the impacts you want to make. You actually might feel like you are failing, but you have to keep going. You have to never give up, and have to remember that each part that you're doing, and you're doing well, you doing it well, is great, but the piece that you know you don't got, pass it on. Let the ego go and pull somebody else in to help you out.
Absolutely.
That's a real, and that's what you do. That is, I really think that's a huge sign of leadership, to be able to acknowledge your strengths, acknowledge your areas of growth, but also being able to say, hey, I want to pull people together and be a connector. And I want to be vulnerable and say, this is what I have, but this is also what I need, and ask for it. How did you get to be that way? How did you become that person that is able to have this vulnerability, but also have such strength in your vision and how you show up?
The strength comes from because I do have strength of vision and conviction and values of what is important to me, and I don't delineate from them. Where I am more pragmatic and strategic is knowing that my way isn't always the right way or appropriate way, or there are multiple ways to do this. And so just being very open to what else is possible. I mean, I will tell you, I am very direct. I do have a very strong opinion on a lot of things, but I also know that I have to leave space for others to share their opinions in a way to where they feel a part of that process. Some days I'm great at it, there are other days that I'm not. And I think that's the other thing that we also have to acknowledge as well, is that we're not always on our A game 24/7.
Thank you for saying that.
And so a big part of that for me is more so recognizing when I know that I am what you may call above the line or below the line, or when I'm not being my full self. And that's where a lot of the self-care comes in, because years ago my whole thing was just work, and not really having that balance of Jamilica time, because there were just so many things that need to be done.
I
was like, we gotta get it done. But it wasn't until I also started taking a step back to do my own, this is what I need, because if I'm not whole, I can't show up in my whole self for others. If I'm not continuously educating myself, and I mean just reading and studying, and like, I'm a podcast nerd. I just listen to the most random things, and people say, how do you know these random facts? There's something I listen to 2 a.m. on podcasts. I don't know. And so all of those things have caused me to be more self-reflective, and I saw that as I was being more self-reflective, taking more care of myself, being more cognizant of how my actions can impact others, it has helped me. But by no means do I have it perfect, but I'm at the place to where I can recognize it and go from there.
I love that. And so as we get ready to come to a close, we love to always do this pay it forward section, and I think that there's so many gems you've already dropped, but just to ask you directly, what advice would you give to incoming Corps members that are watching this video, who are like, I'm going to be a 2025 Corps member, I'm at the beginning, I haven't even done summer training, what should I be thinking about or trying to do at this point?
Number one, trust the process. I have watched Teach for America evolve over the years, and it improved in so many ways, especially in the training, development, and supports that provided someone entering the Corps. Trust the process. We come in with our opinions, we come in with our ideas, all of us come in with our degrees, and we say, yes, I know this. And it's like, oh, well, I came in with my degree and I learned I did not know this. And so that's number one, just trust the process. Understand that people's intentions are pure, even though you may not always agree with the actions. Another piece to that is really learn about the community that you're going to be serving. And not just what you read on Wikipedia, but take some time to talk to the locals. Make sure you're in their businesses and supporting them and having conversations, because it's also not just about what you do in the classroom, but also what you're doing in the community and what you're living and what you're serving. And so they want to see you. They want to know about you. And don't feel as though just because you may not look like your students or have the same background of your students, that in some way you're at a deficit. No, you're bringing a different perspective and energy to them that they also need to see and know as well. And so you have an opportunity to do that coming into the core. And be careful. If you want some other things to be done, just be careful. You might be on that path like me and stay in education, which is great. But also stay focused in terms of what you have planned and mapped out, but also be okay with deviation and change also.
I love that. And so, because that definitely was me, I had a plan to go to law school, and then, like you said, that's in that 5 year mark. And then you just at that point, it's like,
it's 5 years.
I'm like, accept of work. I'm about to figure it out. That's
so when y'all hit 4 year, pay real close attention
that's
to your next steps. No one told me that.
No one told me that, and snaps to that. So for the board members who are finishing their first year, finishing their second year, looking closer to alumnihood, what are your thoughts for them? How can they maximize that time where it's like, I'm almost done with this commitment, I'm in it, but I'm about, I know we just told them to think about the 4 years, but anything else in that nuance of time?
Well, in that nuance of time, I think that's also a great time to think about networking, because you spend the first year so much focused on your craft and what you're doing. Second year, third year really gives you an opportunity to think about, well, from a networking perspective, from my next steps, what it is I'm trying to accomplish, what do I need to be thinking about? Because that's when I started really having conversations with people very different from me, from my mentors to people in different fields that I have had interest in. So it gives you an opportunity to just have those conversations in a different lens, in a different way, to really make sure, like, if you do have a plan, which what I find most of us typically do when we're coming through Teach for America, is that really still your life goal? Is that still really is your plan?
That's an excellent point. I wish I'd done that. But and I thought, please do that.
Hindsight is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020.
Yes, I did a little bit of it, but I could have definitely done a lot more.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I love the point about talking to people outside of the field, because I leaned in on educators, I leaned in on people, so I was more swayed. Had I had a more diverse group of people, maybe I would have stuck with their law plan. And then finally, for other alums, what's your call to action for us, for our alumni? How do you want us to, show up and support you, but also just how do you want to show up and support the mission of TFA and this vision of Memphis even?
I mean, the biggest piece is stay involved. Even if you're in education or if you've gone on to other career paths, stay involved. There's so many ways to have a touch point. When you think about organizations here, they're always needing volunteers and other supports coming in to support them. When you think about initiatives like More for Memphis, yes, there's a funding component, but there's also the opportunity of how do I get connected and really be an advocate for so many of the things that we know that we want to look different here in Memphis. And we have an opportunity to do that. When I think about alum as well, is that don't forget where you came from, because sometimes we also do siloing the opposite way. We get so into our field and the track that we're in, is that at the same thing, we don't take time to stay connected to our communities, do our self-care, really be connected in a different way to where we can make a difference. And so the biggest thing is stay involved and stay connected.
And we're going to make sure that Jamilica stays involved, stays connected, because we're going to get her to sign this wall. It's a rite of passage for all the alums. So we're going to make sure that she gets to sign that wall. And I thank you for all the work you're doing. And we want to continue to do more for Memphis. And we at TFA Memphis, whatever you need, we're going to be there for you, because you definitely are somebody that we're proud of. And we just love. I love this time with her. So in the chat, please in the chat, give her all the love, all the support, and do like she just called us to do. Let's connect. Let's converse. Let's talk. Let's share some ideas. What was something that made you think, oh, I didn't think about that, or thank you, I needed to hear that, because definitely you were preaching to me during this conversation as well, and healing me in some of my confusion right now, and my figuring out what I'm doing in my career. So I appreciate you so much, and we will see y'all in the next episode.
All right, thanks everybody.